Hello and welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shilendra and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. I hope you and your family are well. For you to view this episode and other sessions that are on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to directly ask questions from our guests. So please press the follow button if you're watching on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, press the subscribe button and smash the bell icon. And if you're watching on Facebook, then you can do two things. One is press the like and the love button and share this episode with other groups that have got artificial intelligence bent. So I'm sure many of you, so I can see there are around about 19, 20 people watching. So guys, if you're watching us now, tell us which country are you coming from? Which part of the world are you watching this in live? So that'll be great if you could just, in the comment section, mention which city you are coming from and which country you're coming from. I will be more than happy to take that on as well. So please tell us where are you coming from. Okay, now the use of artificial intelligence, AI that is, in the classroom. So if you talk about education in the classroom, often brings up images of robots teaching children. Do you think robots teaching children, something like that? Okay. Students interacting with softwares to get things done, something like that? Or software and machines replacing teachers and educators. Is that what we're going to look at? Current development contain a little of these stereotypes, but in ways that benefits more students and teachers and make education a lot more responsive to everyone's need. The pandemic, which is COVID, has caught everyone unprepared. So we're not prepared for COVID, and suddenly we had to work from home, and suddenly the students had to study at home, especially teachers. They had to teach from a new medium. Keeping students engaged is difficult when all you have to work is with a screen. Before the pandemic, some schools and educational institutions were already using tools in the classroom to help improve learning outcomes for the students. And like my children, they get iPads and stuff to talk to people, to interact with and collaborate, but that wasn't that full. Both virtual reality and augmented reality, VR and AR education technology uses artificial intelligence to create more immersive learning environments, but they are not yet utilized in the schools. So let's think about that. The learning experience changes dramatically when students can interact with the environment they're studying. The developments we are likely to see revolve around these core capabilities offered by artificial intelligence, which is personalization, automation, adaptation. These are the things that we're looking at when we're talking about education and impact of AI on education. So today we are going to talk about that. Before I get there, let me look at who all have said where they've come from. So I've got Anshul Srivastava from India, Neela Bahadur, hi Neela, how are you? From New Delhi. Anshul Srivastava from Gurgaon, India, he's clarified that. Vineet Dhawan from Kuala Lumpur. Daft Pavan says hi. And Vikas is from Delhi. And Daft Pavan says, how are you? I'm doing fine, Daft. Hope you're doing well as well. Okay, so every week, as you know, every fortnight, we get Marc Teerlink. Marc Teerlink, who is the Global Vice President at SAP for Intelligent Enterprise Solutions and Artificial Intelligence. Marc is active in the startup community as an angel investor, mentor, and board member. So without any further ado, let me get in Marc so that we just kick on the session. But before that, let us know where are you watching this episode from? Which part of the world are you in? So let me get in Marc. Hi, Marc.
Hey, Shari. Good afternoon for you. Good morning for Europe.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, and good evening for our friends at the West Coast in the US. I think the change from daylight saving time to standard time actually makes some more people available, as I already have noticed. It's an exciting day today, isn't it?
Yeah. So hey, Marc, let me do the initial stuff. That is, welcome to the 10th episode of Artificial Intelligence Startup Series. Imagine we've done 10 episodes together and time flies.
It's incredible. I mean, when we started, we had like, well, let's just do one. And then people said like, oh, this is really fun. You guys should do more. I mean, like, okay. And then every 2 weeks we had to like, oh, I have to get up out of bed. It's early, etc. And then it's always, I mean, I always tell myself, well, I need to get a cat nap after this show, but I'm so excited that it's actually good for my productivity. I can tell you that's.
Yeah, you have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so
Yeah.
there's not productivity on there. Good stuff. Mark, I asked a question to the audience. Where are they watching this episode from? There are a few that have come on. So Robin Rastogi is from Sydney, Australia. Hi, Robin. How are you? Suparna Das Gupta says hello from Sydney. Hello, Suparna. Neelab Bahadur says hello, Mark. Mark, you've got
Hey, Neela.
Abdul Razak says good morning from India. Hi, Abdul. How are you? So we've got people from India, Sydney, Kuala Lumpur, Delhi, well, all the places. Guys, please let us know where are you watching this episode from. It'll be great to know. Okay, Mark, first question to you. I gave some brief about education and AI. And with the pandemic, COVID in there, it has been, people have been forced to work from home. People have been forced to study from home, and teachers have been forced to teach from the screens. In fact, today is my aunt's birthday, and she's a teacher, and I just wished her birthday, and she had the screen on. She said, I'm just going to go teach now. She was showing me her screen. So the world has changed. How do you see all of that changing? And how do startups look at it? How are startups working in the education space?
Wow, that's a lot of questions in one question. All right. So let's.
I promised I'll only ask one question. That's why.
No, it's a really good one. So earlier last week we had an SAP event called SAP Now, and I had the pleasure to give one of the largest sessions in it, which was called From Agility to Resilience. And the point is that when we started at a change like the COVID crisis, we all did what agility is. We were nimble, we moved fast, we improvised, we ran. And then we got exhausted. And it's a little bit like you're running to catch a train, and you will get that train and you will hop on board. But 3 minutes later, you're going to come to the next station where you need to cross 2 platforms to make the next train, and you're out of breath. And this is what has happened with a lot of companies, but also with a lot of educators. So the main question now is for education, but also for other industry, whether this COVID or whatever will happen, this digital turnaround, this digital change isn't going to go away anymore. So what are we going to do to build a resilient mechanism that doesn't exhaust our students, doesn't exhaust our teachers, doesn't put more work, but actually where we use technology to lower the workload to make it more interesting? And the first is you have to make school relevant for today. The reality is always that we get people from top universities. You have had it, Shelley. I've had a top university. They become your intern or you become your graduate hire. And the first 6 years, I'm not saying that people are totally useless. That would be an incredible insult for their honed and sharpened mind. But the first 6 months, they lack that connection to how do we do this in business? You know, the secret rules of a culture and all these things. But also the real practical things, you know, make a pivot table in Excel so we can report this tomorrow, and those kind of things. And I think to make school relevant, we have to make sure we have the world of today inside the classroom, right? And technology and robotics isn't everything. I won't say that, but it's a part. So having smart speakers that, for instance, work with your experiments, right? We all know of schools where our 4th grader or 5th grader work together and they make a big terrarium and they put some plants and some insect in and they follow that. But let's now put some sensors in it. Let's now have that sensor that you can see at home with a webcam how it's doing. Mm-hmm. Let's now have, and one of the things I really like, for instance, ABB and Boston Dynamics have been working together with some smaller spot robots, you know, in these kind of experiments, like spot waters the plants, for example. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you can learn closely in a classroom, but also physically at home to interact, you and I building a robot together with 3D printing. We both design the components, we both print them together. And for those that can afford a 3D printer at home, that's phenomenal luxury. But in reality, we see much more like you had copy shops in the past. You now see 3D printing in demand. I'll send my design to a place today, and tomorrow morning it gets delivered and I have my component. So slowly, when we get some more mass customization of those things, we suddenly get kits that design components, print components, work together physically or remotely. Now, ideally, I'm a big fan of Socratic schooling. Ideally, this is going to make some people upset. Ideally, kids shouldn't go 5 days a week to school physically.
Well, it makes me upset too.
Well, the other part is of course the parents, right? The parents want to like go 6 days, you come to them 7 days a week, right? But the reality is, what if we can do other things than classroom, whether it is physically at school or it is after school from home? Is there a way to digital connect them? Now, safeguarding and safety and monitoring, all these things, of course, are important with young learners because we don't have the discipline, right? It's not the secondary age where the concern is. It's actually starting with third, fourth, and fifth graders. But when we move to school, it's not just about coding. But whether it's physical robotics, like a Boston Dynamic, or this software robotics, right? Take the test results from the sensor, plot the graph for the work I'm doing now, right? I mean, you and I used rulers and grids, and we had to write down all these things. And that's really nice to understand the process, don't get me wrong. But if you've done it 20 times, you get it, right? All you now want to do is the numbers plot from a sensor. So you can actually start analyzing. And what we want, the future of work, is actually also about honing the skills, sharpening the saws of our mind. Because when the numbing, repetitive jobs can be done by robotics, then the question is, can we understand what the robotics is doing, whether it's software robotics or hardware robotics? Can we understand what it's doing? And can we make combinations that humans are really good at? And an example is computers are much better as chess. But they're not better at the chess-mate part. They try to take the most efficient route, which mostly takes longer for them because you and I as human beings sometimes struggle to give in, right? Well, computers just say, I did 5 calculations, it's over. And then struggle to give in. Sometimes we find a creative gambit that wasn't foreseen by the software, right? That's what we're really good at as human beings, that out of the box, taking that other angle. So the more we can actually work on what I always say, let the robots do the heavy lifting, let the humans do the thinking, the more we can do that. So I think the biggest major development is that schools become, this is how it is. But guys, let's do some experimental test bedding with this technology. By the time you guys are graduated, this is old crap. This is old stuff. I mean, when my first was born, Lego had a 4K or 4K R2D2. Wow. And you needed a flashlight to control it, right? And then you look at the EV3 series from Lego today, right? And my youngest made, when he was like in 5th grade, made a weather station with thermosensors before and after, Dutch style windmill, infrared sensors to measure it, connect to a laptop to do all the plotting, right? I mean, just a few years between two kids, so it's I think students that already use robotics to monitor, is a really good thing. Like the example of the plant experiment. And the fun is you can do it from home, or you can give them a dedicated school app where they do it on. And the most important is, how do you connect that community? Like school is the most important. It's the most important tribe outside your family when you're a kid. Right? Our social skills are shaped. Our self-confidence is created. And let's be honest, traditional, if you weren't on younger age the prettiest or the strongest or the funniest and most courageous one, you're mostly, and I don't know about you, but I was the nerd. I was the guy that they asked the question, I knew the answer. I was the Google of the class, and trust me, it didn't make me popular. I got my revenge later in life. Don't get me wrong, Michelle. But the point is more that we can create actually tribes within the tribe and communities within the community and connect kids as long as they have that physical connection at school as well. That's my long answer on your questions. I think help teachers to be motivated, help kids to be interested in discovering new things. That's the two summary thing there.
Okay. Before I ask you my second question, I must say one thing. I'm asking this question to everyone. Where are you coming from? Which part of the world are you watching this episode in? I've got a few answers. There is Aditya Garg. Hi, Aditya. He's from Gurgaon in India. Then I've got Venkat Yadav. Hi, Venkat. He's from India at the moment. Then I've got Kata Nani, and he's saying, nice to see you again. Hi, Kata. How are you? Thank you very much. Venkat Yadav says, hi, Mark and Shalendra. Hi, guys. Okay. Thank you. So please let us know where are you coming from, which part of the world you're watching this episode from in the comment section, and I will share that with everyone. Okay. Now, if you've got a question during this episode, please shoot that question in the comment section. I'll take that question definitely in the Q&A section, and please stay for it. And if you're shy, if you think that you don't want to ask question in public domain, then I've created something for you. There is a code that you just take a picture of this, go to your phone, and then just go in and ask your question. We can come back to you with an answer through email. So you can scan this QR code and ask the question. We will still answer the question even afterwards. So 2 things or 3 things you could do. You could ask the question in the comment section, and I will take it just after this, just at the end of the Q&As in the Q&A section. If you're shy, you don't want to ask the question in public, you can scan this particular QR code or use that bit.ly code and write your question there. We will definitely get back to you later. And thirdly, please like this episode, love this, share this with your audience so more and more people can get benefit out of this. So that's where I wanted to ask you a few questions. Okay, quickly. Mark, AI in education, do you see any kind of a relationship, or is it robots that are going to walk through the schools? That's what we're going to see very soon.
No. I mean, first let's look at software, right? There is nothing more boring for a teacher to check a multiple choice test, right? That's if you can offload that from a teacher, and an educator can actually look to the open answers a student gives, right? That already makes a lot of things much more relaxed. So where we will need to go to is more standardized educational software, because the problem is that education is only profitable if you have the mass market in your hands, and most software players weren't interested in going there. The reality is, if we want secondary school students to be interested and use technology and engage, right? I mean, not many 8-year-olds will directly start with a Raspberry Pi. They might start with Lego Mindstorm and physical robotics, and that's great. Not many 8-year-olds will go in coding and say, yippee, Python, right? But the reality is there will be a few. But exposing them is everything, and it starts with exposing the educator. And one of the things, I'm a big fan of Socratic learning or principles like Montessori, teach me to do it myself. Classroom situations that you actually get the better student coaching and better in one subject, to coach those that need some help instead of the teacher doing all the work. You actually create a tribe, unity, but most important, here's the word again, you can get self-reliance and resilience. The concern is, if the teacher isn't educated and comfortable with technology, they get surpassed by their students. And that's being surpassed by 10-year, 11-year-old that don't respect for technology is very painful. So the first we need to address is actually getting teachers more comfortable with technology, not in a, let me tell you about coding all teachers, but here are 5 tools. We standardize them. So this is going to be private-public collaboration, right? Governments investing something in some standard and say, hey, we need 5 pieces of software that you can say, these are the questions, these are the answers, and these are the multiple choices. Now, it's much easier if you have the means as a school to say, we're going to do the multiple choice on an iPad or a tablet. It's great because it's digital already typed in. But you and I know, Shelley, if you take the country of India as an example, right, it's not very likely that every school in India will have an iPad or a tablet for their kids, right?
Yep.
They will have paper things. So you probably will need for their teacher a fast, not too expensive, fast kind of printer that all the student homework goes in and then basically gets parsed in the cloud and comes back to the teacher and says, okay, great, these are the multiple choice answers. These are the answers I was unclear about. You know, student did this and then went to the next one, etc. And these are the outliers. And then the teacher basically starts saying, okay, let me now make notes and comments on the, how do you call it? The open questions. That's a first simple step. And then you can automate some processes. As I said, Raspberry Pi, $30, you know, for a class to have 2 or 3 to program and cluster and do things. It's great. And that's easy to say in the Western world. But in the developing world or in lower economic developed areas of developed countries, that's still a lot of money per classroom, per student, etc. to do. So we need to figure out in the open source domain what we can do to make Lego blocks or bricks or components that other software developers, excited parents, teachers can work on. But we also, as a government, need to standardize some components that all schools can benefit from, you know? And the most important word I'm going to say, customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen some software for schools, but like, you go click here and do there, and then you flip it, and I mean, I like, dude, I know software, and I have a problem with this. Like, how can you give this to a teacher, right? Or, wow, what a great interface in 2020. I know I used to make these interfaces like 18 years ago, right? Yep. So it's gonna take a new generation that says, like, swipe for the answer, those kind of things. Why would you want to click on A, B, C, D? Why would you just want to swipe an answer, right? And
there is someone who said, you said new generation to do that. Tony Nolan says, I have a 7-year-old who's coding Python.
Excellent. Next step, R. Let your 7-year-old work with R because that's the statistic part, and Python to organize the work stream. Love it. Get them on Anaconda or get them on one of those libraries. But the most important is get them out to play as well, physically.
Absolutely.
Hours, because you need a physical stimulus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, very quickly, I'm asking this question. Where are you watching this episode from? And I've got a few more notes. Avinash Chandra, hi Avinash, is watching from New Delhi. Ramana Reddy is watching from India. So we've got 2 more guys. Hi Ramana, how are you? So, okay. Mark, one such startup that has been working on AI in education is RobonomicsAI. That's our guest for today. Yes. And before I get to Robonomics, Manu Rajput says, I'm from India too. Hi Manu, how are you? Okay, Robonomics.ai. Robonomics.ai is a pioneering platform business that democratizes, and my fumbling into it, democratizes adoption of artificial intelligence-based business applications. They upskill AI and digital consultants to build innovative solutions for corporates. On one hand, they help organizations solve their business problems by implementing AI-based solutions across structural automation journey. And on the other hand, they enable rapid prototyping using Solution Factory. Freshly upskilled IT consultants and students build MVPs in this Solution Factory, often working after hours. They build pre-configured solutions that businesses can implement at low cost, time, and risk. Okay, today we have with us Samir Sinha, who is the founder and CEO of Robonomics.ai, an Australian-born platform business aiming to democratize AI and RPA adoption. He's registered with the Australian Government's Research Council as a researcher in AI and has been leading the development of deep learning algorithms. Samir is one of the industry's leaders who established offshoring as the prime delivery methodology for transformation projects in Australia and New Zealand. He was the MD for HCL Australia and previously head of global operations for the SAP practice at TCS. So he's got some SAP background as well. Samir started off as a mechanical engineer before doing an MBA from IIM Calcutta. He's specializing in AI for healthcare from Stanford University. He's been featured on publications like The Australian, CIO Magazine, and Information Age. He's a TEDx speaker like you, Mark, and has spoken at multiple events. So without any further ado, let me get Samir. Hi, Samir. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Hey,
Great.
Peter.
I've got two TEDx speakers on the same show. Good stuff.
TED never allowed two speakers on the same stage. So we had to create this platform to come up and talk to each other, right?
Right. And on top of it, we get more than 6, 12, or 18 minutes.
Okay, guys. Before I start my questions to Sam, if you've got a question, please shoot that question in the comment section, and I'll take that question in the Q&A section. And also let us know where are you watching this episode from. Okay, Samir, welcome to the AI Startup Series. This is the 10th episode. We've done 9, and you're the 10th guest to the series. So tell us about your journey from how you started. How did you get into AI and now education? And how's the journey been being a startup?
Okay, let me go back to 2012, 2013.
Mhm.
That's when I used to work for a company called Wipro, and we did our first few projects in robotic process automation. And the company was developing their AI platform, and we took that to some of our customers. And that provided me some insights into what AI can do, what the capabilities are. And it took me 3 years to finally say, hey, this is too exciting. So I chucked a 25-year corporate career and became a startup. So 2016, we formed RobonomicsAI with just one charter. Let's focus on AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, and then let's figure out how the world looks like through this lens. We did not know much beyond that in terms of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. All we knew was we wanted to focus on this area. So that's how it started.
Okay.
And we had a few customers who liked the idea. So we ended up getting a few projects where customers wanted to explore what this new technology is. So we had a contract. And then we said, okay, to deliver on these contracts, we need people. We looked right, we looked left, up, down. We couldn't find people. This was a long time ago. So these skills are still difficult to find. And then we ended up almost by accident. I had this friend from my childhood days who gave me a call and said, look, I have my daughter in third year software engineering. She's looking for a summer internship. Can you help her? I said, fine. We are about to do some projects on IBM Watson at that time, Mark. Probably the time you would have been there as well.
Very likely. I was there a while.
Right. So we built this healthcare solution on Google, and we decided to port it to IBM Watson because we wanted to compete in a competition that IBM was running on healthcare, on solution providers who were building innovative solutions. So anyway, so this girl joined us as a summer intern, and she was based in India, and we would discuss some new functionality, some new API in IBM Watson. And the next morning, she would have the code ready for me to review in my inbox. It happened first day, second day, and then I said, nah, this does not seem right. So I gave her a call. I said, Jasmine, I know you're good, okay? Don't get me wrong, but you can't be this good. So she hesitatingly said, actually, there are six of us working on this project, and we are bunking all our classes. We're working 24 by 7 on this IBM Watson project for healthcare. I went like, okay, who are the other people? Oh, they're my classmates. They got to know there's an opportunity to work on IBM Watson. So we decided to focus and go deep into it. I said, okay, that's really wonderful. Give me the names. I'd like to issue them the same certificates that I'm issuing you for the summer intern. No, actually, they have their summer internship sorted out. They just wanted an opportunity to work on AI.
That was brilliant.
And we went,
Wow.
wow, this is not what we were when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
This is a completely new generation. They look at things differently. Okay, for all the screaming that we do at them, you are on your devices all the time, etc., etc. This was a view into this new generation that we got almost by accident. But what we saw was so amazing. We said, let's forget everything else. Okay, let's forget everything else. Let's double down on this one insight that we have had about the world we live in and about the youngsters who are going to take this world forward. Okay. So the next thing we do is we create a pretty PowerPoint deck and we start bouncing it off to people. We came back with a long-term 5-year-ish contract with an institute under Mumbai University. And the gig was that we would come and train their students, undergraduate students, on these new technologies while they were still studying. And as part of their final year contract, as part of their final year capstone project, they would build projects for our clients. Now, this fitted very well with what we were trying to do from the corporate side because most companies were experimenting with the new technologies. So they weren't rolling out the new technologies in large projects. They were experimenting with little proof of concepts or minimum viable projects. Now, these minimum viable products, they needed innovation. They necessarily did not need someone with 15, 20 years experience to build a solution that will never break, that will be the most efficient, that will have no bugs. Guess what? That breed of developers in the new tech does not exist. So you had to train up people. So we said, okay, we have to train up people. So let's start training up the students. Now, 30 students volunteered to join our first cohort. We took them through what this new technology is, what it can do, what it cannot do. And then they prepared the final year capstone projects. And when they built these projects, we took these projects and we went to large companies like TCS and Cognizant and WNS. And we said, hey, we have a bunch of developers, and this is the kind of product they have built. This is the kind of technology that they have built. They took a while to pick up their jaws from the floor because the products were so innovative. These kids had put their heart and soul into, first is you get a chance to work on AI. The other, you're working for live business problems. This is no longer a classroom examination that you just submit and walk away. And then you go into the real world and you face something totally different. So the students and their professors, they really went to town with those projects, and it showed in the quality of what we got out of them. So these guys, the companies that we went to, they said, we need to hire these guys. Okay, where are they? I went like, they're in the campus. They are still students.
Yep.
So these guys came to the campus and they recruited the students not as freshers, but as experienced graduates, experienced consultants. So the students actually got a promotion before they got a job.
No, that's I think you've been very, very lucky in this space, that you've found the right kind of talent and who've got that hardworking, mindset that they wanted to do something and turn it around. Very, very inspiring. And to the audience, guys who are watching this, if you have a story like this, please mention that in the comment section, and I will definitely talk to. We need to beat what Samir got today, so maybe we can have something from the audience coming in, and we can throw it. Samir said beat that, but that was very inspiring, Samir. Of course, I would have started a company as well if I'd got some talent like that. So,
You know what? There will be people in your audience right now who will have the same degree of passion and more. So we saw this in Mumbai and we said, is this a Mumbai thing?
oh yeah.
Is it because of those professors who made it happen?
So
So we said,
so
okay, yes, Mark.
so one of the things I'd like to ask you, because this has been a little bit my concern, right? I've seen the last years students around the world picking up whether it is OpenAI, TensorFlow, AWL, student libraries of Watson, H2A AI is one of the new upcomers, and they get the coding. But one of the things that really bugs the pajamas out of me is they don't get the data, and we've created a whole generation that doesn't look to page 2 for Google, because page 2 is for losers. And the great thing is there are some of those, right? Those are the kids that actually love those police thrillers where somebody says blah 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 and I correlate this and I correlate it and do this and this is the criminal, right? And that kind of stuff. But the reality is the puzzle, the analytic puzzle, to go through what is the right way to ask the question, whether it is in Google search or what you and I used to go when we used to go to the library, right? We had to figure out what are the top books we need to start quoting for our paper, our thesis, our research, whatever. And in this part, at one part is democratization of information is phenomenal, because it gives us, the world is our oyster, but it also means that people are drowning in a sea of information and don't have that filter. We have filter failure, for a better word, right? And education hasn't honed and trained the last 20 years, nor the internet, nor our profession, the masses in, hold on, and we see this reflecting in things like the fake news, how simple a piece of news is reproduced, because we uninformed, we don't check the source, we don't check the validity, we don't check the cross-correlate if the author is really right, if the person actually published it. We just cut and paste it through. So my point is, we see then these people building these phenomenal libraries of data manipulation, yet they lack that essential part in assessing the data. And therefore, they struggle 1 year or 1.5 years later when they're really building up a career in how do I unbiased data? How do I, with all my good intent, I took all these examples and now I've made a bias, a racistic, a gender preference, an excluding instead of inclusive algorithm. And so we come a long way from, public class, hello world, Java kind of programming till AI kind of stuff. But we are lacking the skills of that filter. We still have that filter failure in our society, in our education. So I was really, from one person who talks about democratization of knowledge to the other, I was really interested to see what is your angle, how to address this from now on, because you had that phenomenal experience you just shared. And now, how are we going to make sure that we don't create a class of brilliant idiot savants in programming but can't balance the data that they're working with?
Yes. Like Atlassian calls them. Um, so to begin with, I have a point of view that the future does not belong to big data. The future belongs to small data.
Well,
Okay. Um, so the volume of data that will be required to achieve the same outcomes um, is reducing drastically. If you were to look at the first deep learning algorithm that was made in Google to identify cats, I think they used 10 billion images. Now, we ended up creating an algorithm to identify corrosion from images of drones taken by images of industrial assets taken by drones. We used 279 images. So the volume of data, one is the way you deal with the data that you have. The other is algorithms become more intelligent over a period of time. And the other thing is these algorithms have already learned from huge volumes of data. So now they can work with smaller data sets as we move forward.
Mhm.
And if you look at Google, they've published like 25 million data sets. So the beginning hurdle that we had, do we have enough data to get started? I don't think that'll remain as big a hurdle as we go along. What will remain a big hurdle is, what do you do with this data? What do you do with this power? Do you use this to identify cats in YouTube videos? Or do you use this power to identify cancer cells from photographs of little lesions that you have on the skin? So the application of these technologies requires a degree of maturity, requires a certain mindset, a certain knowledge about what the world problems are, which may actually not be available with the younger generation because they're just starting off.
Mhm.
And this is a gap that needs to be filled with gray hair and gray beard. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, you're telling me I shouldn't consider dying the coming 10 years just like this. You know, early graying is not always a blessing. You know that, right?
So all the experience that you have in looking at problems in the world helps us figure out what problem we need to solve, helps us prioritize. Okay, for students who are picking up these new technologies, you know what their biggest strength is? Their biggest strength is their utter ignorance of how old world technologies could not solve those problems.
mhm.
They bring that fresh outside in thinking, not just the passion. Okay. And that's why I have a lot of belief in them. Um, this generation, the way it goes about learning, the way it goes about adopting new technologies, new concepts, that's their strength. Okay. And what we need to do is we need to channelize their energy. We need to channelize their passion in a direction that generates the greater global good, that helps people. Okay. And I'm not for a moment saying I have it all figured out. I mean, talking about AI in education, at times I think the one person who needs most education is me because I have not figured out how to get my messages across to my teenage sons.
Tell me about it. Tell me
Tell me
about
about it, absolutely.
tell
Hey,
me. It's
very,
so this.
let's get out of this philosophy and get to the meat of it. But before that, I need to say a couple of things. Guys, if you've got a question on AI in education, please put that in the comment section and we will take that. And if you're shy, if you think that you don't want to ask it in public and you want to ask it in private, then you can actually scan this code and you will go to a place where you can write the question and it will come to us and we can come back to you with the answer to that question. Coming back to my guests again. Sorry, Samir. I just got carried away with the comment itself. So, guys, if you've got a question, please put that in the comment section. And like it, share it, so that more and more people can learn from this conversation. So, evolving nature of Education 4.0. What do you see? What are the opportunities there? And we've talked about a few from the talent perspective. So, talk about what's happening around Education 4.0.
Okay, let's take a step back. Okay, what's the purpose of education? Why do we have education in the first place?
Because parents are too lame to sit with their kids and transfer their knowledge. Or we can't afford it. We have a day job. That's
We need to keep the kids busy, right?
Get them out of my house.
Ask me if I had to have both of them at home.
Yeah, I know. We need education because we need to find jobs. Okay. The purpose of education is, of course, research, but more short term, it's to find good jobs. So there is a linkage between employability and education. Okay. Most of us want our kids to study because we want them to have good careers and hence a good lifestyle, right? If you look at how the industry has evolved over the years, okay, we were in the third industrial revolution, which brought about, this massive assembly lines, right? So when all factories work like assembly lines, okay, the education system geared up to create resources that will fit in that job market, right? So people who could run those assembly lines best, people who could follow the rules, people who could go through those channels, okay? And those channels were very clearly defined. You're going to tighten this nut, you're going to loosen this part, and that's how the whole cars got made in a Ford factory. And then every aspect of human existence took inspiration from Henry Ford and built assembly lines in every business enterprise. So all the hallowed educational institutions of the world, they ramped up to produce more efficient clerks. People who could sign paper, people who could run an assembly line. Okay? Now, as Mark very rightly said in his TED talk, I think we should share that TED talk in the link somewhere, Shailendra, if we can.
Well,
So,
Mark, you need to do that later.
okay, cool. So, Mark spoke about AI and automation taking away the grunt work of those assembly lines. And once that grunt work is taken away, which was all of 1700 hours, I guess, up to all that we are left with is 500 hours of work. Okay? Which means all the education system in the world today is preparing you for a future which is already history.
You're trained for yesterday's job.
Precisely. You are being trained for yesterday's jobs.
Absolutely.
It's the irony is that I really like that line, and thank you for referring to my TED talk. When I did the 500-hour job, one of the frustration is that we see students being educated, but 60% of the students being educated today will get a job that doesn't exist yet, right? 7 years ago, there were no drone operators as a job, right? There were a few people who did it, but it wasn't a job category. There wasn't a AI trainer, for a better word. But there were also many, many, many simpler jobs, right? Robot operator and those kind of things in machinery wasn't the way it is today. The worst is we have actually downplayed, as you said, critical thinking in our education. Now, of course, there's many, many educational systems like, not everyone needs to be critical thinking. Some people just need to do the execution. But even within the execution, you need to have a critical decision like, does this make sense? I mean, everybody who's gone through the TSA in the United States, the security at the airport, has had a moment that they open a suitcase and say, what is this? And are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? This is not according to the rules. I've had several objects that I thought, man, the damage I could do with this, right? And, it's according to the rules, just take it. And we need to start using our brain again. But to go back more to the question you had, Shelley, and I'd like to go to Samir for this, is purpose, right? When I did the 500-hour job, I had if 2/3 of your mind-numbing, repetitive tasks can be taken away by technology. And it doesn't matter if you're a nurse, right? If you're just a home nurse and you visit people, with sensors and a little patch, you could already do all the number reading, and you could have more purpose in your job and having a quality visit instead of spending 80% of your time writing down the numbers and saying, Mr. Shelley, are you okay? Are you okay? We'll see you next week. Don't forget to take your pills. Instead of, let's talk about how you take your pills. Let's talk about how you self-medicate your rhythm during the day instead of what we agreed. And all these social purpose part, right? Because the real purpose of education for me is actually for the next generation to give them skills how to live their life. How to live their life and to find this purpose in their work, but also this purpose outside the work. The irony is Sebastian Junger has a great book, Tribe. And it's about those values that tribes have, mostly clusters of 50 people, where only 3 or 4, still today in the Kalahari Desert or the Gobi Desert, would go out and would hunter-gatherer. And the other 47, they would do things that we can't classify as this is work, this is purpose, this is caretaking, because they all blended together. But the most important was that value mechanism that kept the tribe and get that knowledge exchange going. And exactly as you say, Sam, it's the moment we went to industrialization, we beefed up our productive hours. But the reality is none of these people on this call, we might have contract from, well, 2 of us, from an employer and you from yourself, that says you will work so many hours a week and you will do this. But the reality is we do it the way we do it because it makes sense. And sometimes that may be a tough working week. Sometimes it may be a relaxed working week. But the purpose of education is not to jam knowledge in somebody's head. It's to hone life skills, to understand what we need to do with this world and to create a legacy. Now, that sounds very philosophical. But the reality is if we're spending X% of our tax money to battle the impact of global warming, we're not really creating a purpose for the next generation. We're undoing the damage that the previous generation did, right? Actually, getting a better world would already assume that we didn't have a climate issue. And especially the lower class or the lower educated in this world are going to be hurt the best. I mean, bomb flood in Bangladesh, right, is mostly not hitting those that are in the upper 3% of the country. Yeah, it's hitting their factories, but not them personally. They're not without a house. So how do you build an education mechanism to be more societal, globally aware, right? To have an understanding of, there's a difference. Let's take religion for 10 seconds. I make this a really provocative show.
I'm scared.
I'm not discussing religion as such. But most of us don't know our religion. Most of us only know the book of our religion.
Yep.
Right? Not the context of it. And most of us know coding, but they don't know the context of in which that code is being used to. And there is a big difference in teaching our kids and how to code on a Raspberry Pi, or how to figure out what it does. And I'm not talking about this is a CPU, this is the clock speed. No, like, how does information get processed and how do you apply that, right? What can you do with it? And I really think what I liked about what Sam said, and then we're going to go back to Sam, is that the point that every new generation comes fresh and isn't bothered by the things we've learned, right? The best example, and then I'll shut up, is at our last move when we moved from Washington, D.C., soon to be the capital of the free world again. Let's keep the show provocative.
You did religion, now you're doing politics. You're doing well.
Let's see if we get more people responding today on the show. When we moved from Washington, D.C. to Amsterdam, I had floppy disks with my thesis, those 3.5-inch things with my thesis there, laying on my desk, which is sort of memorabilia, and they were packed. And my youngest says, "Wow, did you use the 3D printer to print the save symbol? That's really cool." Like, he has no clue why there is a floppy symbol on Excel and on Word, etc. It's just for him the save symbol, right?
Yeah.
And there are so many things archiving. They don't physically know how an archive, like going Rolodexes. It's really hilarious that we still have beep, beep, beep phones on an iPhone or a Samsung phone because it's based on that original, And so we take things with us from one generation to the next. But the best is still the QWERTY keyboard, right? In the 1900s, we needed to optimize the amount of typing movements of the hands, and therefore we came in the Western English-speaking world with QWERTY, and French world with AZERTY, etc., etc. There is no reason for a tablet or a phone to have a QWERTY keyboard. There is just no, because we're not typing with two hands like we're doing this. There's really no reason. The swipe keyboard is much more efficient, and we're still stuck in that paradigm of 120 years ago. And in the word of Elsa, we need to let go.
No, I've changed. So I've got, in my Samsung phone, I've got this functionality where I just press the button and speak to it and it'll translate, and I don't even bother editing it. Let it go the way it is. Let it learn, and next time it'll be its problem to fix it. But you know what? I'm not bothering typing anymore.
Which is great. Now the next question is, what does it do to your spelling?
Good one.
Why do you need spelling?
Good question. Why do you need
Well,
spelling?
Whether you call me SIR or SAMEER, as long as you're talking to me, I'm happy.
True, but agreement.
So a lot of the skills that we held close to our hearts are redundant in the new world. I
understand. I get you, but let me give you the famous example, right? This is one of the things that the NLP thing that really drove us nuts. Please write Mrs. right now. You need spelling for that line. If you want to teach your AI in parsing, you need the right spelling. Please write right now.
Yeah, I can see the permutations, combinations of errors coming out of that.
Yes. And then the other one was, of course, it was less about spelling, but I dreamt I shot an elephant wearing my pajamas. I mean, the amount of permutation in that sense. Was the elephant wearing my pajamas? Was the elephant in my pajamas? Did I shoot in my pajamas? I mean, those were nuts. Those were the kind of challenges we had to literally do in the NLP part, in the learning part. And then, of course, there is some kiddo now, 10 years later, says, oh, let's take that library, type in this sentence. Like, you have no clue how much work we had in doing that. And you're right. From this data set, we can now go to that data set, but that comes back to my point. Which data do you pick first? And this is really the most important part. Like, yes, you can, with 250 really well representative data samples on a trained algorithm, really boost up. But you can, and think about a famous oopsie-dozy of dark-colored people and gorillas, because there are no white gorillas, there's only black gorillas, right? How an algorithm absolutely did a disastrous combination where you were looking on things and you confuse people and gorillas together in that. And so picking the right representative samples is an art by itself. And you can only do that because you know the impact. So that's the part, right? How do we teach our
new generation
to our kids? Yeah. But again, I mean, and by the way, let's go to Samir's TED Talk, because can you, for our viewers, give the 3 core lessons, and then how did you get there? Because I think that's an interesting part there as well.
How I got there was an extension of the story that I told you in the beginning, where this girl started coding, and we ended up creating a new business model of crowdsourcing product development and MVP development using university students. And I'm surprised why there aren't more people doing it. Okay. So from 3.5, 4 years of experience in doing that, we realized that we could make a process out of it. Yes, you're right. The students are new, they are fresh. They are at times they're even worried about giving things a try. But if we can provide that level of mentoring to them, if we can provide that level of guidance to them, then we can achieve a huge lot more by using different people for what they are best suited for. Okay? And this is another area where I think education needs to step up significantly. Okay. As Samir Sinha, I have my strengths and weaknesses. As Mark, you have your own strengths and weaknesses, and Shailendra likewise, right? But if we can be treated as individuals with our own quirks, with our own strengths and weaknesses, and if there is a way to personalize education, if there is a way to find what is the best fit job for each educated student, we will have enhanced the entire world to a completely new level. So, whatever personalization you have seen today in terms of ads being served to you when you go shopping online or searching for stuff, just expand it to everything that you do, to every lesson that you learn. I learn lessons in a very different way to the way Shailendra learns. Can we have the same classroom where I'm being taught in a different way to what Shailendra is being taught? And if we are able to bring that level of personalization and optimization of effort, we will have so many more Einsteins in the world, because we'll have an Einstein for art, we'll have an Einstein for mathematics, another one for physics. Right now, everyone is being sent through the same assembly line of our classrooms.
Totally agree. Samir, you were also talking about one of the things that you did with the government around personalization for students. Um, can you share that use case?
So personalization we could take to a very different level. Okay, right from so there are a lot of edtech companies that are personalizing content. Okay, there are a lot of edtech companies that are creating some very brilliant content. Okay, what's missing is a focus on the student.
Yep.
There's a huge lot of focus on the content, but do we know what is going on in the child's mind? Okay, are we just throwing too much content at him or her that's driving the poor student up the wall? Okay, as it is, they are stressed with their studies
Mhm.
and the changes in curriculum and everything that's happening. And then on top of that, we have the COVIDemic happening,
Mhm.
which is changing the way education is delivered. And what's not helping at all is no one had seen it coming. So no one had a clue about how things will evolve. So our teachers are probably the least prepared to use technology to deliver everything. Okay, so rather than using technology to make it even harder for the teachers to teach remotely, how can we make it easy for them? How can we get AI to start understanding a student at a level no one has ever even tried understanding a student? You know, when I was growing up, my father would wake me up early in the morning, 4:35. He said, son, you've had a good night's sleep. This is when your mind is rested, it's fresh. So, whatever you want to understand best, whatever you want to retain longer, study in the morning. So, for 18 years, poor man, he would wake up, then he would come and wake me up, get up and study. And then I went to do my graduation in another city and I lived in a hostel. And that's when I discovered I'm actually not a morning person.
But
I
your
work
father
better at
was very likely.
right? I work better at nights. So what if what if we were able to understand students in this level of detail
Mhm.
and get each student to fill in some gap in the puzzle piece that we create for the entire world, that we create for the industry. And the industry needs it today more than ever before. We are at a point in time where each industry is like a yellow and black cab. And suddenly, this internet boom has happened, and there is potential for every company, every organization to either become a Kodak or to become an Uber.
Mhm.
And earlier, when Uber was growing up, it was the internet. Today, we have AI, we have machine learning, we have computer vision. So, this is the next internet boom. This is the AI boom. This is the AI summer we have been waiting for decades. And the COVID pandemic has created that sense of urgency with which companies can evolve into their digital avatars, into their Uber forms, if they are a face to face business today. Because today, more than ever before, your customers, your suppliers, they are all willing to give remote a try. You're attending this webinar remotely. Okay, it would have been so much more difficult for us, to come together from Amsterdam and Sydney and then talk to people from uh, uh, Manila and Delhi and Sydney. It's This all was always possible with the kind of technologies we have today, but the acceptability of these new norms have come in because of the pandemic.
No, I think that's a real good point, right? I mean, I'm doing this every so many days for SAP. I'm doing some event which is closed with some executives. We make a real good deal. Like, you will not send a substitute. You will show up or not. Because if you're a CFO, we don't want 5 CFOs who want a peer exchange to get the head of accounting. This is not a classistic thing. It's an exchange on the same level. If we do something with the heads of accountancy, we don't want them to send their compliance person, right? We try to get these exchange of 20 people in an open discussion about resilience and agility and what it means for your customer experience or your supply chain, etc. And one of the first, because you should never waste a good crisis, in the words of Winston Churchill, one of the first questions I have, like, I always do this interactive, you like a few minutes polling, a few minutes talking, breakout and back. And one of the first polls is always like, the last 12 months of digital transformation has been driven by the CEO, the CTO, the CDO, you guess what is going. And answer number 5, COVID-19, which is the overall winner in every poll. So that means that these companies that took their 2005 forms, where we had a stack of CDs and we didn't even realize you could go coast to coast with music in your pocket, with an iPad, with an iPod, or later on, when we didn't know how to date by swiping, when the picture on our phone was the size of a little stamp, right? All those, out of those days, companies digitized their horrible paper forms, put them one-on-one in most CRM and ERP systems in the world, and they still run on that. They just have converted that approach to the next version and the next version and bring it to the cloud. But it's that same form where you ask the same question 750 times and drive us nuts, right? And finally, COVID has realized, like, oh no, I cannot have a store with an inventory and an internet shop with another inventory, because now I can't move the inventory from one. I need to maybe have one supply approach, right? All these things that we find very logical, etc. Now, in the same thing where we see a younger generation saying, why are we doing it like this, right? They are really, really challenging the former generation of workers, right, who have challenged those former generation of workers to think out of the box. And yet there are also base principles that also needs to be applied that, don't make the same mistake twice, right? Make another mistake. Don't repeat the past. So in one part, we're balancing in this, how do we keep the lessons from the past and how we keep an open mind? How we take this opportunity from COVID to digitize, right? But not actually fall in the same trap when the next, whatever crisis happens. I mean, a blockade of the English Channel because of the Brexit or whatever, right? It's anything could happen in this future. And if we ever learned anything, that we can't anticipate it. Now, I want to go back to your education part. Let's go to Einstein. He actually wasn't even educated in physics. He was a patent attorney, right? He was a patent attorney working at a patent office, right? Long before he published his stuff. And it's a really good example of a standardized education that fits somebody, and you never allow a right brain person to work in a left brain world and vice versa because of the system. Well, actually, as long as our jobs are round pegs and you can't get any squared thing in it, and that's really where it starts, right? A lot of education tends to go to market, Samir. And when education goes to market, we need to do supply and demand. But then the market basically closes itself up to, maybe we shouldn't have IT people and business people. Maybe we should have people that can bridge that. No, that's actually a solution, because IT people don't speak business and business people don't speak IT. Maybe we should actually build different skills, right? And it's that skill set. So I know that some people are going to be saying, why was he talking religion or why was he talking politics, etc. Because actually politics have everything to do with the skills that we build as a society. And religion shaped the way we think. It has shaped over time the way we think. And just to make the fun, the biggest religion in the world is actually those of the software developers. Because they are connected over languages, over political affiliation and religious affiliation, because their dedication to software development in that same Python and that same R around the world is the largest movement that you can know. It's don't underestimate that.
Absolutely.
So for all of those of you that are developers, I challenge you 1 day a week. Don't do what you always did. Think outside the box. Write with your other hand. Make a graph if you normally code your storyboard. If you normally make a storyboard, write it out in text. Do something different. A few weeks in a row and then see what comes out of it.
Okay. Guys, very quickly, we got to run. We're seriously running short of time. We've done too much of philosophical conversation here. Getting back to Samir. Samir, any use case that you've delivered you wanted to share with the audience which could entice them to talk about robonomics?
Yeah, so we are launching now a new program where we're going to be providing the training alongside use cases to reimagine businesses.
Mhm.
So we've partnered with a company from UK, and I might just even share a slide.
Yep. Well, while you're sharing, guys, if you've got a question for the guys, please put that in the comment section, and I'll definitely take that comment very soon. Take that question to Samir and Mark as we go. And please don't forget to like, love, share, and share this across various groups. Here is the slide which Samir wanted to share. Yes, Samir.
Yeah. So basically, there are these businesses that need digital transformation done. They want these solutions developed, which will help them catapult their business model into the one that is relevant in the post-pandemic world. And then there's this training platform where anyone can sign up. And as you are learning software development, you work on real life projects.
Mhm.
And together, as you learn, you evolve new solutions, you build those minimum viable products, so that when you complete your course, you have an experience of real life projects, and you also have a certificate from, let's say, a company like SAP or Microsoft or UiPath. So this kind of goes together, where this is our way of helping the struggling businesses, and in the process creating a supply of skills that will help upskill people who are Einsteins in physics, but currently working in a legal firm. So
So,
that's basically what I wanted to share with you.
so you're trying to match or bring together the demand and supply so that people can do AI projects, people who are fit to do AI projects as they go. Any particular use case that you've delivered in the past that has been a great success, which you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tried this thing in Mumbai and it kind of worked. And then we said, hey, is it a Mumbai thing or can it work in Australia as well? So we brought that business model over to Australia. We went to UTS. We had a bunch of students who came and worked with us. And then we went to another university in Australia called University of Wollongong, where we trained up 70 students. And then we got some of our business side problems. So after we'd given the students 2 months to learn the new technology, we got some of our customers to come and share the problems they are facing in their business. And then we ran a 2-day hackathon. And out of that hackathon, the winning team, their reward was an internship with us to do more of whatever we did till now. And this team of around about a dozen ace coders, really, nerdy, passionate coders, they have now built solutions to personalize education. And they are also building solutions for healthcare. And we can talk about that later. But whatever experience they have gone through as students in the school, in the university, they have taken all of those problems they were facing, and we built a vision of what the future could look like. And these are now being rolled off as a completely new startup. So while we had the students building solutions for corporate clients that we had over the past 4 years, we have now extended that business model into new startups that we are creating out of whatever these students are building.
Yep. Okay.
So I have a question for Samir. So Samir, because we also are a show about insights in startups and scale-ups, right? So I'm going to have some tougher questions. Let's start. Great initiative, build it up. First thing that a venture capitalist would say, what's the revenue model? How do you make money with that? Great idealistic stuff. Do I want to invest in it? How does Robonomics AI make money?
Yeah. So let's look at the value chain. Okay. Demand is generated by a corporate client. Okay. They need a new solution. And SAP is now a $20 billion or maybe more business just serving that demand.
Depends on the stock rate of the week.
Well, it depends on what,
The Dow has been a little bit bumpy the last week.
depends on when you're talking. We were talking 2 weeks ago.
Fair enough. So the first revenue that comes in is the corporates. They pay us to build innovative solutions for them. Okay. Now, these solutions, they could say that we want to own the IP, or they could say lower the cost and you keep the IP. Okay. Second, the universities, they want their students trained up and employable. So we get paid by the educational institutions, and we are now opening it up to the people at large. So the way you would sign up to a training program, you would normally sign up to a same training program. The only difference is in the journey that you go with us, there's an internship and there's a higher chance of employment, because all these companies that came to the campus in Mumbai University, we are recruitment agents for them. So we are trainers for the students. We are recruitment agents for these people who hire our students. And in the process, we build solutions which can be licensed on a SaaS or a services-based model to the corporates.
So let's go to the student. I'm now a student. I'm really excited. I'm watching this. I want to be part of that. Do I have to pay money in that, or am I just going to benefit from the fact that other people pay you? Because that's the question people are having, right?
Both. So we have a 4-step process, which I spoke about in my TEDx talk. It starts with an explorer. An explorer is a person who's just getting started on this journey. Okay. He doesn't pay anything or hardly anything at all. Okay. So that's not where money is made. Okay. That's where you get exposure. The next phase is that of a learner. This is where we get experienced people with gray hair, with scars on the back, of doing such projects for corporates who come and share their knowledge. Okay. The classes that we conduct are not academic oriented, in the sense we do flipped classrooms. Here is content, go through this content before you come to the class. When you come to the Zoom classes, for example, we're going to be talking about, once you start building this solution, okay, what are the practical problems you'll face? Okay, what are the gaps that you need to look out for? Okay, so practical knowledge sharing is what we do, rather than this is the theory of generative adversarial neural nets, and this is what they are. This is how they work. Now, you can do that much better in a course online. Okay, once you have gone through our classes, and the classes are remotely, so anyone can join in, and you submit questions, and this is where the personalization tools that were built by the first cohort, that will be used to personalize education for people who are going through this journey. And we're using some very advanced testing techniques. So our claim is that for the kind of testing techniques that we are using to monitor and to measure the progress of each student through the learning process, it's going to be a lot more insightful and powerful than what a corporate would get by reading a CV and conducting an interview. Because now these students have been with us for several months. Okay, so you go through the learning process, and at the end of it, you get a certification from an industry multinational software company, one of the big players like SAP or Microsoft. Okay, so that itself enhances your value. But what you have now the opportunity to do is to work on those real life projects, and
So,
that is the value add.
yeah. So let me summarize this for our viewers a few times, right? So one, you chose to go over full value chain. Basically, the value chain from the beginning of education till actually doing something with or for or being recognized by a company, as well as the second value chain, basically the supply of talent and giving a better insight of the qualification of that talent to a prospective employer. You second chose for students because nothing is for free in life and there needs to be some commitment. But also want to make sure that they don't make the wrong decision. You chose a freemium premium model for them, and solutions that for corporations or enterprises are creating. You chose the model like you buy it, it's yours, or you buy it, the IP stays ours, and you have two pricing differentiations. And that's basically how you partner with enterprises and bring the capacity of real life cases to students. Did I summarize it correct?
That's
Excellent.
right.
I
That
want to make
enterprise
sure
is startups now. Sorry.
No, I just want to make sure for our viewers we
Absolutely.
decide
Absolutely.
giving it's also that we give some lessons like when you start a startup, because this is the discussion is always about what is my MVP, right? That's the first. Most people think the word minimal means really minimal. That's not minimum viable means it works. Minimum delight means it probably sells, right? Think about a Honeywell thermostat and a Nest. Think about an air dryer or a Dyson, the air dryer, where you put your hands in and they're really dry. So at one part, you need to create, as you guys did, a platform, a service, a model approach that is that minimum delight, both for students as for employers. You need to develop a pricing mechanism that has at one part freemium premium mechanism, but the other part with or without IP pricing mechanism, because that way you can retrain your things. And then of course you need to do a delivery mechanism. In your case, that's remote, right? How you digital embrace other players. And you said it's subtle, you need to develop partnerships with the SAP, the Microsoft, etc., that will bless your certification and make sure, yeah, it's according to the book, because otherwise your certification is. That's quite a lot of stuff to build up in a short time, actually, Samir. That was pretty impressive.
It's not happened in a hurry. We've taken 4 years to figure this out, 4.5 now. So once the learners end up getting the certificates, LEAR, the L plates drop off, they become experienced and they become earners then. So now they work on the client projects and they are earning some money. Okay, this is commercial validation that whatever you have learned, there is some business out there, there's some corporate out there, there's some startup out there that is willing to pay you for the skills you have acquired. That commercial validation of your skill is something which is missing in the industry today. Okay. Once you've started working on a few projects, you get elevated to the level of a mentor. You become an MVP, a most valuable professional.
Tom Brady now really looks at his million rings on his hand and say, is that what it means?
Okay.
So now these mentors end up coming back and training the next cohort. And they come on webinars, we raise up their profile as a thought leader in that chosen space that they have decided to go with us on the journey. So that's how we built a self-sustaining ecosystem where we can actually provide one-on-one mentoring and coaching to the students so that they can quickly get on to becoming productive, becoming earning members of the family.
Okay.
So how do you use those people graduate? This is the other part, right? We also we are the sum of our networks, to say it like that. We're the sum of our referrals. So for people who want to jump on this, right, how do you find those referrers? How do they find somebody how was this program for you, Shelley, right? I mean, because in the end, Drucker always used to say the purpose of a business is to create a customer. And then in 2008, this is really, really absolutely shameful self-promotion. I published this article in 2008. I said, no. In the digital world, the purpose of a business is to create a customer who creates other customers. So how do you do that?
So these mentors are basically the ones who are creating other customers. They are really the leading lights of what we are trying to do. They are the shining examples, whether we have succeeded or not. So eventually, these big showcases are the ones we are aiming to create. And the aim is that they end up inspiring the rest of the teams to come up and learn more, to come up and deliver more. And to be sure, look, you cannot just learn one skill and think that that's the end of the world. This is, again, a cycle. So you might become a mentor in a particular skill set, but you might want to go back and learn another skill set in the same process. So this is an ecosystem play. This is a community play where people handhold each other to go on this journey. And that's how, apart from an AI that can bring that personalization, we are having more experienced people who have been on this journey before hand holding other people along. And that's how the positive word spreads as well.
And that is so powerful. This is where nowadays a lot of traditional education institutes struggle with. Like 10, 15 years ago, you were an alumni of name university, and you would every year give them money, and they used to have events, a homecoming or whatever. And that slowly in the digital world, the last 5, 6 years has been floating. You know, you get newsletter, you get a once-a-year event. But what you lack is this, hold on, how are you keeping us connected? How are you actually creating this ripple effect? Let's go back to the word. How do you create that tribe with its own sub-tribes that continuously find each other and says in that network, can someone help me with? Because that's the other part, which I assume, Samir, is for you also. When a lot of these discussions start having, you probably spot like, we might actually want to fill that void, right? That's let's go. If I'm one of the mentors and I had like, Samir, I have a pitch for you. We lack this educational part. I really would like a few guys and girls together and we'll build this. What's your response to that when somebody knocks on your door? Is that possible in your model? Are they allowed? Is there a revenue model for them in it? How does it work?
Absolutely. They end up becoming founders and CEOs of new startups that we end up incubating.
So, and then the other part is, this is the tough question again. How do you avoid the Tupperware effect? That people think, oh, it's like a Tupperware party. You make a Tupperware and then everybody has to sell it on their party to their friends and then list their friends to become one of them. How do you keep the integrity of the program there going? Because that's another important part there.
Yeah, this is not multi-level marketing at all. We are creating a tribe, but mentors are not selling to other people. Mentors are helping people who have signed up on their own. Okay. And they are just helping them get along the journey so that the learning process is more efficient, so that we are able to personalize and help a person develop that mastery of individual skills quicker. So you end up with, of course, there's feedback, there's feedback and there's connection back to what is it that corporates and startups are willing to pay for. Okay. So we are not just saying we are a training organization and that's it. In fact, we are not a training organization because we expect our students to go learn through pre-developed content. We just partner with content providers and that's where the training happens. Our value addition is in bringing that learning with the practical experience of developing something. So our focus is there. Our focus is not to sell Tupperware, really. It's quite the opposite. We want the creators of Tupperware. We don't want sellers of Tupperware.
So let me give you a shameless plug, right? If I'm now one of these people who are studying or are software developing and I'm watching this show and I was like, where do I enroll now? Where do they go?
They send me a message and we'll take it from there.
Right. Because the next part is you still kept it as a sort of, like most start and scale-ups do, right? As a sort of closed thing. But sooner or later, you need to open this up and there needs to be a Robonaut. Really, I need more coffee this morning. Robonomics.
No, it is the name.
AI, right? This is where you go. This is where you enroll. This is where you do it, right? Because I understand, right? If you,
Yes.
This is also a valuable lesson for other parties. If you open up too early for the world, you might not have the scale to absorb all the demand. If you open up too late, you miss an opportunity. So there's this balancing point. There comes a moment that Samir can't deal with this. Just send me a message, and he gets this flood of messages after a show. And like, what did I do? Right. So sooner or later. So what are your plans to opening that up? What do you expect?
Yeah. So what we're doing right now is we are partnering. So this entire business model that we've built, we did it in the offline world, in the pre-COVID world. Okay. And now we are starting to use a very advanced platform, which Infinity Global, and bringing that tie-up to Australia. So we're having that international tie-up of a UK company and an Australian company coming together. And they have a range of courses and we are bringing the projects. And that combined story is what we are taking to the market today. So if anyone's interested, you could send an email to help@robonomics.ai, HELP @ROBONOMICS.ai, and we'll be more than happy to have you on board for the next cohort.
And I've shared that in the comments as well, so you can just click and email. So that's
You mean you sent your resume already, Shelley?
Yeah, I did. Okay.
Be a great mentor. You would be a great mentor.
I'm quick. I'm very, very good. Okay.
So just to add to that, we are not looking at only students of universities. we have this concept of the undiscoverables, people who are doing other jobs in their existing roles. They can come join us. Whatever we do need not require your full-time commitment. In fact, almost all the people who are with us, they engage with us after their day jobs. So you don't necessarily need, you can be a mentor, you can be a trainer, you can be a student, you can be one of those people who develop solutions. So we are looking for multiple kinds of roles to join us.
Okay, let me highlight something before we get to the next part. And that is, I also run another show, which is Women in Data Science. And every time I'm asked this question, what do I do? I've got this background, I've done this, I've done Python, what do I do? And so forth. So I think what we can also do is, those guys who are watching this, Women in Data Science guys, please, you can send your CV to help@robonomics.ai, and of course, Samir's team will look at it, and you can go to the next level and start working with them. Okay, before I get to the audience Q&A, which is where we will ask questions from what questions we've been posted on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. One question to you, Samir, that is, do you have any question for us? We've asked enough. Your turn.
So, where is SAP going in this journey?
Wow. You know how a fan model works, like that. So we created a roadmap 2 years ago for every component of SAP. So whether it is the S/4HANA ERP, the success factor HR part, etc. And we said we need to build components that offload tasks for knowledge workers, get the mind-numbing repetitive tasks away, compare two contracts, reconcile an invoice. One of the most successful thing is for people like me that used to travel a lot, make a picture of your receipt and bang, fill in your expense statement. Everybody who does expenses says like, you can do that? Yes, you can. So that's what we, for instance, did with SAP Concur. Then we, in SAP Analytic Clouds, we put our ML services. Now, we are not a developer platform per se. If you develop on our SAP Analytic Clouds, we would develop to connect to SAP. So in the Gartner part, right, we don't have this incredible wide vision and this incredible ability to execute in the TensorFlows or the Watsons or whatever for all the obvious reasons, right? Because that's not what we do, right? We are not striving to be another H2O AI or whatever, but it's important in this part that you look at it and that you say, well, how in this market are you going to enable people to build little specific for their company so unique that it doesn't match mass processes, little offloading of tasks. And then we have this like, well, there's 3 things you can do it. You can use the normal tool sets that are there, whether it's Tensor or AWL or Microsoft or Watson. And then in data intelligence, which we created, especially for data science developers, you can do your version control and you can bring your libraries. And we have all the APIs in the SAP Cloud to connect. So at one part, summarizing, we have a roadmap of capabilities that come available, either as intelligent technology packages, either as APIs that you can connect, but also as semi-finished product assets that you can plug in. And the other part, we realized that there still is a need for unique processes that with the more, I wouldn't say conventional, but with the current going machine learning and AI tools are done. So we try to be as open as possible that people can develop that, manage that life cycle, go back to the last training, go redo the training with other labeled data, and then bring that in connection to SAP. But our focus is really, how do you get connected to SAP and support some of the processes or do something customized. We are not in the world to be independent as a AI developer platform. That's not what our core business is about.
You have Leonardo, which is Leonardo, which
Oh,
is
well, we're building with Leonardo. Leonardo is not a product, right? Leonardo is, talking about my baby, right? Leonardo was a portfolio. And a portfolio in which we said, if you take a clock, the first quarter was build intelligent technology packages, small little technologies that can do one thing. Take an image and map it to my catalog, which is, for instance, if you sell products, right, use this image recognition so people can say, do you have something in the catalog like this? I might not find this exact, oops, the screen goes wrong, coffee cup or this exact glass, but I might have something in my catalog enough for you to say, yeah, I need 6 of those. If you need an exact replacement, doesn't do it. If you need to just something like that, it works a lot. Then the second quarter of the disc is basically that you say, let's do co-innovation. Now, for those of you, ladies and gentlemen, that are listening, if you do this kind of technology packages and you think like VC, 76%, 3 out of 4 of your technology, little can I do this, need to continue. So you can only burn a quarter of your investment when you're corporate and you build, because you don't build products, you build just a little technology API or microservice that can do one thing. Then you start using those APIs and string them together with more classic BI or big data technology and say, can I now solve a problem? Instead of technical problem, can I solve a business problem? So you start co-innovating with clients, exactly as you say, 2 kind of contracts. You'll get the AI, it's a customized project, or we'll IP, or we'll continue with the IP, which is, this is the deal. And the angle always will continue with the IP, unless in the end, right? So you have 2 pricing mechanisms. Now your number goes down, because you have all these great ideas, but sometimes the problem isn't solved, not this way with technology, or it is so specific you can't train a generic engine, or the client just wants to keep it. So 23% of co-innovation is what needs to go to your third quarter, and that you say, let's now make an asset. An asset has a product code, and it can be used as it's like an IKEA set. The holes are made on, there's a blueprint, but you still need to call a friend to assemble it. And then you OEM it into your product, like either in SAP, or we make it for our partners in the library, the Wipros, the Tatas, the Accentures, the Deloittes, the IBM Consulting of this world, available to do their work with, or it goes into SAP. Again, 76% of that has to go through that third pipeline to the fourth. So Leonardo was a portfolio that we managed like that. We promised to deliver that in 3 years. It's less than 3 years that I joined, and we have delivered that and came to our guided outcomes, our assets. So now we're going to go to the next part. You can, as an idiot, keep building, but we're not that software company, because ERP and those kind of things go slower. So we're now focusing on, we build a lot. Let's now bring this to market. So Leonardo portfolio is more stable now. There's no sort of innovation engine, but it's now the innovation by application, which means we need to bring this forward to the market, need to bring this to our customer experience, need to bring this to the masses, for a better word. And so slowly, what we see is our teams are integrating more and more with SAP. So my job is half the time literally transforming ourselves internally while we are doing external transformation. So that's more or less what SAP is doing with it. And I tell you, it's still a lot of work.
Yeah, I can understand. It's the innovator's dilemma. It's so much more difficult to do such kind of innovation in a company that's been successful doing business in a particular way.
Oh, it is. But it's also for our clients, right? I mean, hey, I've been for 20 years on premise. Why do I should go to this cloud stuff, dude? Like, how many people were ill in your data center last week, month, COVID? If they were in an SAP cloud, would you have had that problem? I mean, just not even talking technology. You're not talking about business resilience here. Yeah. So let's go to some more questions, Shelley.
No, let's go to the audience questions, guys. We are running really short of time. This was very, very entertaining, and I think
too much.
And informative. So it was infotainment in true sense. Sorry, and more so relevant today. And I didn't plan it this way, but education and I just realized in the morning that it was my Mamiji's birthday. So, happy birthday, Meena Mami. And it was and she's a teacher, and she was teaching when I called her up, and she said, I'm in my class teaching on the screen, and she showed me the screen. Anyways, we were talking about that earlier as well. So that's how it is. Thank you very much. Let me get to the audience question. Guys, this is your last moment. If you have a question, please put that in the comment section. I'll take it now. And here we go. The first comment is from Neelam Bahadur. And he says, hey, misspelled it. Education, just like IT and now AI is getting democratized. Knowledge and hence learning is freely available. It's students' learnability that becomes critical.
It is. And actually, the irony is that starts already at primary education, right? How much self-reliant skills has your education given you to sit behind a self-training course, to figure out that there is a moment you need to start asking questions to others, that you need to start connecting to others and say, guys, girls, I'm stuck with this. How do you solve this, right? And the great thing of the current generation is they're more understanding social and social networking at one part. But the other part is we still have many of them trained, this is how it is. And people are actually learning different. I mean, one of the things I would love in secondary education is that AI picks up the mechanism how somebody's learning. Is it a right brain or left brain learner? Math is significantly in research shown and proven to be acquired different by females than males. And by the way, they both come to the same brilliant outcome. The way they approach the problem is different. So the sooner you can spot this as an educator, the better you in the primary and secondary education, the better you contribute to the student learnability. Because otherwise, it's the mentors that basically have to fix the stuff afterwards.
Okay.
On that, I'll just add to what Mark has just said. So we did a survey of how student preferences have evolved during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and how students have felt the move from face-to-face to online education. And what we realized, and we later found out that research also proves this, is students who are more self-disciplined, okay, they found the move to online a lot easier. Okay. Now, a self-disciplined child is an oxymoron in itself. So your point about if a child cannot discipline himself, which is unfair to expect in any case, how are we helping the child move to that era of self-learning? What are we doing? And that's one of the big.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I am a big fan of both IB, International Baccalaureate approaches, and Montessori approaches, because they are based on the will help you to do it yourself, right? But it also means you need to fund different class sizes, different coaching, that kids actually have the time in the program to help each other. That's what I would miss if it was Zoom today. I am this guy who learns by making notes, but if you sometimes are too fast, you're hardly locking up. And then you go to the student beside you, and say, what did he mean with that? And that's pretty hard to do, like you can chat that, but you don't have time to make notes anymore. So I do want to make one point though. I think learning languages, this is where AI and technology really comes well. Like there's nothing more patient than a bot to continuously repeat over and over and over and over, improving your pronunciation.
Very
then you need a human teacher for learning the jokes in the context. That's the. But learnability is we need to reinvent education, the coming generation. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay, quickly. I'm running short of time, so let's run. Abdul Razak says, hi, I have done diploma course in Oracle PL SQL DBA and then also done Python and R, and I want to be good AI job holder, but organizations are not willing to select me as I've done just this after my BCS graduation. They are giving preference to master's degree holder only. Please suggest. Right, your alley, Samir.
Yep, sure. So, Abdul, if you look at organizations like IBM and Amazon and Facebook, they don't need a university degree for you to apply to jobs with them anymore. Okay. What they need is whether you can build code, whether you know these technologies. So the world is moving towards, as far as we're concerned, for example, if I had two applications, one, a student has done his master's in IT from a university, and the other, the student has done some certification with some, learning some technical languages and has done two or three projects, it's a no-brainer. A university fresh graduate, I'll have to train him for 6 to 9 months, whereas someone who's had some experience, he can be productive on day one. So I don't think the world is moving towards you show your degrees and you will get a job. But if you can show what projects you have done, then it will become much easier to get a job, particularly in the way the world is moving towards gig economy. You can start doing projects in Upwork and Freelancer, etc., just by learning stuff.
I think that's a real good point. The one-liner is when I get new hires, fresh from grad school or fresh from college, I was like, do you have a GitHub that I can look at? Do you have a few prototypes that you created? Are there some capture of a school project you did on video and then some explanation how you solve that? And I mean, but the simple question, is there a GitHub? Right? Is for me good enough. Hey, but I also like to know, did you contribute to the open source community? Is there a problem you solve? Like, show me. Right?
Yeah.
If they're like, blah, 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 I'm like, yeah, initiative, really knowing what they're doing. So yeah, I fully echo what Samir says. Make your own portfolio. Don't let yourself be restrained just by your resume. Show what you can do to the world.
And I'll add 2 points to it. One is send your CV to help@robonomics.ai, and that will be one starting point. And the second thing is I have done a video on data science for beginners where I explain all of these concepts. So you can watch that. It's available on my YouTube channel as well. So I'm promoting that video. It's called Data Science for Beginners. Anyways, next question is from Chirag Vyas. Hi Chirag, he says, please highlight how AI for higher education institutions in India is going to work. I'm adding that one line in front. So Samir, you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the curriculum needs to be looked at. You can't really be, if you're talking about software engineering, for example, you can't be teaching COBOL or Fortran anymore. The funny thing about AI is this whole concept of teaching with a textbook. With AI, if a textbook is written, there is a high probability that technology is already obsolete. The time it takes to write a textbook and print and bring it to the market. So there has to be some other digital form of curriculum management. Okay. The second very important thing is teacher training. How do teachers go from teaching theory to coaching students on how to learn? Okay. And that's easier said than done. It's one of the hardest nuts to crack because teachers have spent 10, 20, 30 years creating clerks for the assembly lines. Now, companies want to hire you for what you have created in GitHub, right? It's a very different job market out there. So how do we get the teachers to go on that journey? Okay. Now, the actual implementation of AI in the classroom, I think there is a need for a platform that transcends physical face to face classrooms or digital remote learning. Okay, a single platform. Because as we go, we will realize that it's probably a great idea to have a maths tutor from India or China and an English tutor from London and a sports physical health tutor from Australia teaching a child sitting in South Africa. It just brings about the best talent for your student. Now this kind of a school needs to be envisioned and created, and it won't happen in a hurry, because unfortunately education as an industry has one of the slowest uptake of technology.
So let me add one more point here, or a comment. It's a bit provocative. Sorry, I'm losing words now. Been speaking for 2 hours. I think the policymakers also need to be trained on what AI is all about. I've heard. I was in India and I was talking to someone who's part of the advisory team to the PMO, and I realized that those guys don't even understand what it is all about. So you need to train the trainer, and the trainer needs to train the guy who's going to make that policy decision before that policy is made. And I think that's a big change that needs to be done in India. But that's everyone's.
Well, I think in any country, Shelley. I mean, I recall last year's hearing with Marc
Absolutely.
Teerlink sitting there and
Absolutely.
getting the question. So when I tweet on Facebook,
Oh,
right,
yeah. Yes.
the other moment he changed his face expression. Like, what?
After that video, which went viral, I used to say, these guys are making policy for us. Do they don't even know what they're talking about? Anyways, let's move on. Next question. We're short of time. Rachel Kessel on LinkedIn says, hi, Rachel, first of all. Thank you for watching the episode. What is the biggest threat or danger in AI development? Are there laws constraining the development in any way?
Let me give that really short. See, Samir wants to add that. I think the most important, Rachel, is bias. This is one of my broken records that I do all the time. What is the training data you use? Who are the people training it? How do you create transparency? How the AI came to an answer? And how do you do mitigating actions if the model doesn't really supply what you wanted? And those are the 4 parts in transparency that are the most important when AI starts delivering other answers that would exclude, reject, bias its results.
To add to that, I'll just recall what you said earlier in the session, Mark, where you were talking about, so what should AI be doing? And the element of ethics comes in there. So AI is quite powerful. It's like fire. But what are we going to use it for? Are we going to use it for producing weapons of mass destruction? Are we going to so are there laws? Yes. People are evolving laws, and at times they're going from one extreme to the other. I remember when pandemic broke out, the government of state of Karnataka in India. Now, India's IT capital is Bangalore, and that's the capital of the state of Karnataka. And the policymakers came out with a policy: remote learning is banned. Okay, remote learning is banned, and their logic was that because there are large volumes of students who don't have access to digital means of learning, if we allow learning, it will create a disparity in education. So again, there was a law made there. Okay? But these are not simple answers. These are not, we will go through moving from one extreme to the other. And as the adoption of AI increases, as it becomes more democratized, laws will probably find an equilibrium point.
Okay. Next comment is from Rachel again. She says, I agree that when students are given real world problems instead of hypothetical exams, they rise to the occasion and do incredibly innovative work. Yes, absolutely, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. There is a comment from your fan, Samir. Suparna Das Gupta says, Samir is very innovative in his thinking and has great EQ. No wonder the students flock around him. He should give himself a pat on his back. So, well
Thank
done.
you.
How much did you pay for that comment, Samir?
So yeah, what's the rate going?
Really appreciate your kind words, Suparna. Thank you.
Okay. Angelo Kolos, a very good mate of mine, he says, hi, same experience in Sydney with Australian Catholic University. Young talent wants hands-on real opportunities, no theory, no textbooks, just get hands dirty experience.
Angelo, I'd like to connect with you and learn more about that. Very eager.
And I can share his phone number. He's just a phone call away. Angelo, by the way, was on my show and a few months ago. And Angelo used to work at IBM with me, so he's a fellow IBMer. And and he was the CFO of one of the largest St. George's at St. George's Bank. So Angelo, good guy. I'll connect you to Angelo. Angelo also says that's the responsibility of the gray hair experienced professionals who have the scars and the industry experience. We coach and guide the younger generation.
So, Shelley, that means you and I need to put some more gray in our hair. That's actually what Angelo was saying.
I need to put some gray. Okay. Rebecca Buckness, a regular on the show. What does religion and politics have to do with coding? Mark, that's for you.
Well, more seriously, politics, exactly as we just had the question, right, sets the standards, especially for ethical use of data and those kind of things. There's a lot of improvement to do. So sometimes I just bring it up beside the politics of and religion of software development by itself. Religion is by itself a moral framework, and we bring our moral framework into the bias of our technology. Led by agnostic is also religion, is I believe in nothing, right? Or that's so there is a lot of discussion about this, that the way we think in Western world is mostly by Judeo-Christianity influence and moral values. The way we think is the way our language is constructed, is therefore the way we code. So there's actually a more serious thing behind it. But in general, I do think that across all politics and there's no profession that has more practitioners than software development across all politics and religion.
And I agree with you, software development is a religion. When you've met a good software engineer when he talks to you about the passion with which he's been working for nights at end because there was that one bug which was eluding him. When you come across stories like that, you see that passion. That is what I call a missionary zeal. That is the religion of software development.
Okay. Neelab Bahadur says a comment and a thought. Personalization for a child is equal to probably a unique teacher for his own. That is a teacher turned into a cloud-based V for each individual. Then AI can understand the child. Yep, I think we agree with that. Neelab Bahadur says that is break down the concept if a common classroom for X number of students and move over to a new teaching model for an individual deploying AI. He's talking about cloud-based VM.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we have been working on. How do we build the AI which will understand a student at a level of detail he himself doesn't know? Okay. And then we personalize not just a learning journey, but a transformation journey. How do we take him through a transformation journey where he transforms his own learning self? So hopefully we will come back with more on those in the next few months. Thank
Okay.
you for that.
Okay. Rebecca Buckness says, seriously great discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for watching and spending time with us. Rebecca says, the gap for teachers to learn this new way of learning is far. How can we minimize the adoption or maximize the adoption?
I have one funny suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did this survey of students and how they have gone through the transition to remote learning and etc., one of the things that came out was students were much quicker in going through this journey. Why don't we reverse and get the students to coach their teachers on how to use the new tools?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
Good point.
It's like, no, it's a real good one, actually.
If students have got it easier, quicker, let's get them to coach their teachers.
One of the things is I see in software a lot, by the way, is literally make a joke and see if the teacher gets it, and then get the permission to explain it. Let me give you a real simple example. Free database administrators walk in a NoSQL bar. They look around and they directly leave because there are no tables. And if you don't get that, guys,
Love it.
that's the discussion.
Love it. Yeah.
Well, that should be title of today's session. I'll have to
highlight.
Walk in a NoSQL bar.
Absolutely.
Okay. Very quickly, Chitrang and Ankita Thakur say, great chat, guys. Good to hear from you, Samir. Hope you've been doing well.
Thank you.
Other fans of yours, Samir. And final question from Neelab Bahadur. Neelab's question is, what do you think are the current AI tech limitations perceived? Which ones overcome will transform education, experience, and gaining skills versus knowledge for the future?
I think it's more in the adoption side. The tech is there, but adopting a new way of learning is the biggest hurdle. And honestly, I've done SAP implementations for decades. The biggest challenge with SAP implementation was not the technology. It was the change management that had to go with the technology, right? Some organizations implement the same software so much better than the others because they manage the change much better. I think I would steal that concept from the SAP world and apply it to education. Same thing with education. The technology is there, it's evolving, but it's how easily, how well, how smoothly we are able to adopt it that will determine the limitations of using the tech. Tech itself is evolving. I don't think it's there yet in all its personalization and digitization. There's still a long way to go, but the biggest barrier will be adoption.
Mark, do you want to add something there?
No, I rest my case. Samir said it. Actually.
I took the example of SAP, so obviously he will have nothing more to say.
Well, my personal thought on that is that it's not about the data, it's not about the tech, it's what you do with it. And actually, that is the biggest barrier that we see around the world, because it's not about taking up that information and making decisions from that. It's people's inhibitions to actually utilize that technology or that process as it is. And as Mark rightly said, that we are smartifying the processes as they go, which makes it much more easier for people to use. Okay, I was hoping that was the final question, but there is one question, and very quickly we'll see if that is, and that's the last question from Chitrang and Ankita Thakur, and they say, when one considers how AI will impact an average person walking down this road, the first point of interaction is through communication. This makes us wonder how big conversational AI will play its part. Thoughts? And I don't think anyone other than Mark can answer that question, because that's right up your alley, Mark.
So 10 years ago, nobody was sitting on a bike with a wireless headset in their ear, listening to the instructions of Google Maps for bikers, how to take the scenic routes or Strava or whatever, right? And on top of it, no one 10 years ago could even imagine that you would talk back to Strava or to Google and say, find me another route, avoid the bridge. By the way, call my wife and add this to my that conversational AI, not even, but those kind of getting used to voice commands is showing us how fast this has happened. The biggest issue with conversational AI today, it's still depending on the training set of the example. So it's all very, very narrow. Whether you have Amazon's product, Alexa, with its skills, you're depending on the skills made. You work with Google Voice, you work with Siri. What we need is a wider, more generic sets of skills, which means everybody needs to make smaller skill sets and contribute to them. The other part is we need more languages beside the top 9 or 10 that we use. I mean, if you want to really get AI in India, you need to make it available for the masses, right? You can't just stick to English, right? It's not even for India and Pakistan, Hindi and Urdu is not even enough. You need to go wider, you need to go dialects and accents. So conversational AI is one, getting used to us making short commands and understanding how to phrase, like how we were taught to make the search efficient on Google, and before that, how we actually would sort information. The second is it's all the little data that available. What we need is more words and language sets, not just in English, by the way, also in English. That is actually about our daily life and our daily usage, and not just the make an appointment in my calendar kind of examples. So there's a way to go, but at the same time, if you look at the commercial organization that would make labeling and data sets, 5 years ago, you had to scratch around to find them and get students. Now I get bombarded every day with 20, 30 new companies say, hey, we're doing labeling and data training sets and we do this. Are you interested? Like, dude, stop spamming me. I mean, 5 years ago, I would have begged for that spam, right? So we're getting more business training sets. We're getting better voice to text, text to voice skills, and better visual recognition skills. Now the conversation, we have the tools to make longer conversation. Now we actually need to do 3 things in conversation. When I ask a question, can you remember what we were talking about? If I go to Google and say, who's Marc Teerlink or who's Samir, I'll guess. And I say, what's his height? And Google has no clue, Samir, that we're still talking about you and we want to know your height, right? So just that contextual, stay in the conversation, keep the memory. That's where we need to go. And we need to have a broader generic switch to things, right? When I'm talking about books, and certainly I'm like, oh, by the way, did you see that movie? Or we're talking about books to me, I say, what did you think about Tenet? Which is not a book. It's an awful Christopher Nolan movie. Phenomenal, awesome, love it. It's not a book. To make that switch, like you and I humans do, those are the 2 challenges that we have for conversational AI. Give it 2-3 years.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. And I am now off with questions. We have gone way past our time of 1 hour. We are 2 hours, 18 minutes. You guys rocked. It was a pleasure having Samir, you on the show. And of course, Marc, like always, you were great. In fact, I understand 6 o'clock in the morning is an early time, but as Samir said, you know, you're fresh and you can understand more things.
No, like Samir, I'm a night person. All my academic work is written between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Really, really. That's not early in the morning. That's night.
Marc, if a night person like you has this level of energy at 6 a.m. in the morning, I will be worried doing a webinar at night with you.
Yeah, be careful with your
The energy would be overwhelming.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. The questions or comments are still coming in. Well, there was a comment from Chitrang saying, cheers, Marc. That was good. And thanks, Marc, Samir, and Shailendra for a great session from Neelab. Thank you. Guys, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I usually ask for a one phrase before you end. Do you have a phrase, Samir, for us?
Keep learning.
Keep learning. Mark?
There's no thinking outside the box. Wake up every day and tell yourself, there is no box.
Man, there is no box. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. It was a pleasure having you both on the show. And I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, guys, that was Samir Sinha and Marc Teerlink from Robonomics and SAP, respectively. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was a pleasure having these guys on the show. So now, before you go, a couple of things. If you've got any question and you didn't ask that question during the show and you still have it in your mind, then you can actually put that question into this place. Just scan this particular QR code. It will take you to a place where it will ask you for your name and question, and you can post that question to us, and I will make sure that question is answered for you directly. So that's where you get more details about, or ask your questions on a replay session. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, please follow me. If you're watching me on watching this on YouTube, then please press the subscribe button and the bell icon. And if you're watching on Twitter, please follow me. If you're watching on Facebook, please like and also share this with other groups, mostly groups that are artificial intelligence focused, so more and more people can learn from both Samir and Mark. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I hope you enjoyed and had a good time. I will see you tomorrow. There is another show slated for tomorrow, and I'll see you then. Till then, goodbye and take care. Bye now.